Hello everyone and welcome. It's Alexandra. Today we're going to work on creating the cover and the binding for our pages in the Natural History mini book. The kit is linked for you down below. There is also a consolidated playlist that includes all of the previous tutorials that I have created for this project. So if you're joining us at this point, please be sure to check all the links in that description box down below. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. I want to say a few words about the measurements of the printed pages because they will determine the size of the covers of your book. My pages, when printed, this specific page, for example, and the one that will be used for the back is going to be the same, is 4 3/8 by 6 3/8. My chipboard covers will be 6 5/8 by 4 5/8, which is 1/4 inch larger on each side than the printed page. So whatever the size of your printed page is, you will add 1/4 inch to each one of those measurements in order to get the size of the chipboard piece that you will need for the cover. And you will need 2 of those. I have already fulfilled some steps from our today's tutorial for one of the chipboard pieces. That's why one of them is already covered with fabric, but I'm going to show you on the remaining piece how to do it. So you will first of all prepare 2 pieces of chipboard that will measure 6 5/8 by 4 5/8. Depending on the size of the pages that you have, I'm giving you my measurements. So I'm going to also create a template. It's just a piece of paper, which is 6 5/8 long, the same as the covers that I'm going to have. And the width is not important. You just need the length. You can make the template as wide as you want. But what I want us to do is to fold this template in half like so, and then burnish on that fold, and then use your pencil in order to mark a line right in the center of the template. And then before you glue the chipboard piece down to the fabric, on one side of the chipboard, I want you to create a line based on the template that you have. So you will kind of continue the line from the template onto your chipboard on one long edge, and then you will do the same on the second edge. And once you have 2 marks on the opposite sides of the chipboard, you will connect them and you will create a line. This line now is 3 5/16 away from the top and the bottom of your chipboard piece. If you want to measure this with a ruler, by all means go ahead and do that. I don't like to measure 16ths. That's why it's easier for me to use a template. This side of the chipboard where you have created the guideline will not be the side where you are going to apply the glue in order to attach the chipboard piece onto muslin. And that's something else that I want to talk about. I will be using muslin for wrapping my covers. This is a cheap fabric, easily accessible. If you can't find muslin, you can use just plain cotton, either white colored cotton or ivory colored, or as a matter of fact, the color doesn't matter as long as you think you are going to be okay with some of its edges showing around your printed pages and also on the spine. I want to use some stamping on the spine. That's why I am going with a neutral color of the fabric. So right now I'm going to use glue stick and apply some glue to the side where I do not have the line. I will center the chipboard piece on top of the fabric, and you will be able to see that I have about 3/4 inch borders all around. I will flip it to this side and make sure that I stretch the fabric nicely so that it doesn't have any folds or wrinkles. Now, in order to start wrapping the fabric around the chipboard, we need to cut the corners just a little bit. So I'm going to use my scissors and cut like this in the corners, making sure that I have about 1/4 inch left of the fabric from the corner of the chipboard to the cut edge. And I will do this on all 4 corners. Now with that same glue stick, I'm going to glue the long sides. Like that. And then in the corners, since with the glue stick it's rather hard to reach, I'm going to use my liquid glue. This happens to be art glitter glue. So I will apply a little bit of the glue inside that corner section, and then I will use my fingernail in order to pinch the corners like so. Okay, this is what we have. I will do the same in the remaining 3 corners. So this is how it should look like at this point. Repeat the same steps for the second piece of chipboard, and don't glue the bottom and the top edges of the fabric to the chipboard yet. Once you're finished with that, just put both of the pieces aside for now. Next, we are going to work with a piece of cardstock. I will be using plain white cardstock, and it measures, in my case, 6 5/8 by 5 3/8. Your measurement of the height can be different from mine based on the size of your printed pages and on the length of the chipboard that you have. So my chipboard pieces are 6 5/8 long. Then it means that my cardstock piece will also be 6 5/8 inch long. But this measurement should be the same both for you and me. On the 5 3/8 inch side, which is right here, this is the side of the cardstock which is 5 3/8. It is at the top. You're going to score at 1.5 from the left hand side, and then you can rotate this piece and score again at 1.5. Then you're going to flip your paper like so and score at every 1/8 of an inch between the 2 lines that you have previously created. You will look at your paper and you will see that it wants to curve in a specific way. So the curve should go like this. You will put your paper on the table and you will now fold the side flaps along the score lines. And you will have a piece that looks like this, and the spine wants to curve in this direction. Okay, then we are going to wrap this piece of cardstock with some more fabric. I'm using the same muslin, and I have here a piece which is, in terms of width, if you measure now the distance from one score line to another, from one flap to another, you will have 2 3/8. That's the width of our spine, so to say. We haven't created it yet, but still, that's the width, 2 3/8. So the fabric piece will be about 1/2 inch more on each side of the flap. Let me zoom this in a little bit so that you can see it better. Here are my score lines, the ones that I folded for creating the side flaps. Now the fabric is about 1/2 inch wider on each one of the sides from the flaps. Okay, I hope that's clear. Now in terms of length, it should be wide enough for you to be able to cover the cardstock like so. Now to glue it down, I will also be using the glue stick, and I'm going to start applying glue from the side, which is right here. I will also mark for myself with 2 lines, which are about 1/2 inch from the folds, so that I know where exactly I need the glue to be applied. Now I'm going to just center my fabric piece on top. Make sure that I don't have any wrinkles or folds on the fabric. I can also use my bone folder if I need to. Let's flip it to this side and glue the fabric on this side in the same way as we did in the front. This is how it should look like. Gently refold the side flaps. You can use your bone folders again just to burnish. I will now distress the edges of this element that will be used for the outer spine of our book. It will also help you distinctively see where the spine itself is and up to where you will need at a later stage attach your front and back covers. So I also want to distress on this side of the flaps because they might be seen even after we attach the covers. Okay, like that. And also on the inside along the top and the bottom of the areas which are covered with fabric. And where I didn't do it, right here. Next, I'm going to use my sewing machine and stitch along the edges on the inside of the spine like this. You're welcome to skip this step if you want to. This is how it looks now. I pulled the threads to the back and tied a double knot in there, and I'm also going to trim the excess threads. I recommend not to start in the corner because all of the corners will be visible when you open your book like so. So if you don't want the threads to be visible there in the corners, please start your stitching somewhere on the side. Now I also want to add just a bit of glue and glue the threads down close to the stitch so that it looks nice even on the inside. Now the next step is really fun. You will have to choose stamps and stamp your heart out. I'm done now with the stamping, and I can continue to the next step, which will be applying the ink along the long edges of the chipboard covers. We have that done, and we will have to attach now our covers to the spine that we have created. That distressed edges on both the chipboard pieces and on the piece that will be used for the outer spine will help you line everything up. And since the length of our pieces is also the same, it will even be easier. One more thing that we can do before gluing everything together is trimming lightly the corners of the cardstock, like so. I'm trimming, if you can notice, up to where the fabric begins. Now I can apply the glue onto these flaps of the outer spine, and then I will apply a bit of glue close to the edge of the chipboard cover, and then I will glue the cover on top of the flap, making sure that I glue it quite close to the distressed fold on the spinal piece, but I do not overlap it. So if I would fold my paper, it would be able to fold nicely. Okay, make sure that you line up the edges as well of both of the pieces. Once everything is in place, you can press down. It's okay that it's upside down. We just need that line to be visible. Okay, and we will do the same thing for the other flap and the second cover. Once your spine is glued down to the chipboard covers, we're going to glue the top and the bottom flaps. You can use either tacky glue for that, or Fabri-Tac, or glue stick. I think that I'm going to add tacky glue in those areas which are close to the spine, and then I could use just glue stick on the rest of the area. Try to pull the fabric from the edges towards the center of the chipboard piece so that you have nice and clean edges. And this is how your cover should look like at this point. It would be nice to distress the remaining edges, both on the side that will be visible and also on the inside. Now we are ready to glue our printed papers to the front cover and also in the back. If you want to use any kind of ribbons or ties for your journal, I do recommend gluing them down under the printed papers. So before you glue your papers down to the cover, find the place for your ties to be. This is how it looks like. Now, if you do not use stitching, then you will simply proceed to the next step where we will create the binding and the inner spine for our book. But I am going to stitch around the printed papers on each one of the parts of the cover. Since it's too big to fit into the sewing machine, I will need to stitch along this edge first, pull my threads in the back, and then stitch again from this corner to this corner, and then tie the threads in the back. And I will repeat the same procedure for the back of the cover. I will stitch first along this edge, and then I will finish my stitching along the remaining 3 edges. I pulled the threads to the back, tied double knots, and secured the tails of the threads with a piece of painter's tape. I also want to mention a few things about stitching. Whenever you stitch on paper, in general, not necessarily on thick paper, always teach yourself to increase the stitch length from the default 2.5 millimeters to at least 3, because you don't want to poke too much through the paper. It will not look good. The second thing, when you stitch through thick paper layers like the ones that we have here, we have chipboard, we have the printed paper, and we have some fabric here, do not stitch at a high speed. I always try to lower the speed down. Yes, I need to be patient, but it's better than breaking down your sewing machine. Also, before you start working on this project, I recommend to create a similar sandwich with the same layers of the paper layers and the fabric and the chipboard that you are going to have on your cover, and maybe try stitching through all those layers prior to actually stitching on the actual cover. Because if you are not really familiar with your sewing machine and its abilities, you better check it out ahead of time. So we have that covered. When the cover of our book is almost ready, we need to get down to creating the binding. Now for the binding, we're going to need a few pieces of cardstock, and this time I'm going to use craft because I will not be covering it with any fabric, so I wanted to match the color scheme of the pages of my book. I'm also going to use another piece of cardstock for reinforcing the inner spine. To make the spine look more interesting, I used a piece of fabric, and this is faux suede, that I cut off the edge of the fabric that I used on another journal for wrapping the cover with it, but I really couldn't get rid of this fuzzy and great looking fabric edge, so I'm going to add it along the top and the bottom of the inner spine of my book. If you don't have anything that looks like this, you can use a piece of maybe a pom-pom trim, or alternatively you could use the muslin and just fold it in half and use the fuzzy edge of the muslin for the same purpose. But I'm going to use the leftover piece of the faux suede fabric edge that I have right here. So let's begin with the cardstock piece that you're going to need for the binding. The height of your cardstock piece should be the same as the height of the printed layer of the paper. In other words, it should be the same as the height of your page. My pages are 6 3/8 long or tall. Okay, so that's why the piece of craft cardstock that I'm going to use for creating the binding is 6 3/8 tall by 8.5 long. 8.5 is going to stay the same for both you and me. But the first measurement you are going to double check based on your printed pages. Now we are going to score this piece in the following way. You are going to first score at 1 1/4 on the left and on the right. So when I flip the paper like so, I can score again at 1 1/4. And then all the space which is between two of those score lines will have to be scored at every 3/8 of an inch. And this is what I have here. How you will have to fold this. Let's first understand. Let's look at the journal here. You can see that between each one of the pages, you have sort of a gusset or a space, which is 3/8 of an inch wide. And we also have the same width of the gusset before the first page and after the second page. Then each one of the pages is attached to the binding with the help of the hinge. And each one of the hinges will also be 3/8 of an inch wide. Now, for us to fold everything correctly and to apply the glue in the correct places, you need to mark first the spaces that will form the hinges. So if you start looking at all the score lines, let's say from this corner, from the left hand corner of your scored cardstock piece, you will first have the flap, which is 1 1/4 inch wide. Then you will need to leave the first space for this, for the space before the hinge of the first page. Then 2 of the upcoming spaces will be used for forming the hinge. And now let me show you better what I mean. If I fold like this and like this, I will show it to you closer, don't worry. I want you to understand what we are doing right now, and then it will be easier for you to fold the rest. So let's have a look at this. Okay, so we will have our flap, then we will have the 3/8 of an inch space or gusset before the first page of our book, and then we will have the hinge to which the first page will be attached. And then next we are going to have another space between the first and the second page, which means that right here we need to create the hinge for our second page. Okay, so here are two of our hinges for the first and the second page, with the space between both of the pages, with the additional space before the first page, and then the flap, with the help of which we are going to attach our binding to the cover that we have created. Now, if we unfold it all and look again in the back, you will see that with the horizontal lines, I marked the spaces that will have to be glued down together and form hinges. Okay, so if you will count all the 3/8 of an inch spaces that you have on this cardstock, you will have 1, 2, 3. Let me speed it up. You will have 16 of them. So when you fold all of the lines, and start to apply glue onto some of the areas in order to form the hinges, you will start with applying the glue to section number 2. Let me do it now. And then you will glue section number 2 to section number 3. Don't forget to burnish, okay? And then once they will be glued together, you will only see 1 and 4 in the back of your paper. Next, you are going to add the glue to the section number 5 and glue it to the section number 6. Don't forget to use your bone folder. It will help you a lot during this process. Okay, so we have now 2 hinges ready, and in the back we see only numbers 1, 4, and 7. Now we will apply the glue to the section number 8, and we will glue it down to number 9, and then again we will fold the paper so that we have a nice hinge. You are welcome to shape the hinges once they're glued down together so that they are vertical and look like this. And that's what we see right now in the back. So next we are going to apply the glue to section number 11, and we will fold it to section number 12. Burnish and unfold your paper gently, and then shape the hinge so that it looks like this. And then we need to create the last hinge, and I'm going to shape the paper first so that it's easier for me to glue everything down. I'm applying the glue to section number 14, and I'm gluing it down to section number 15. And I need just to gently shape this hinge as well. Like the previous hinges. This is what you're going to have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gaps between the hinges, and 2 flaps which are 1¼ inch wide. And these are now the numbers which are visible in the back. Okay, next we are going to need another template, which is the same height as your craft cardstock piece. And for me, it is 6 3/8 long. Now I will also fold it in half like so, and I will mark the line in the center with my pencil. And then when I have the binding piece on the desk with the hinges facing up, I'm going to put the template close to the edge of the craft cardstock and mark on top, and then continue the line from the template and make another mark on the opposite side. This will later on help us find a perfect placement for the binding on the inside of our cover. I want now to take the first page and measure if the hinge can be easily fit inside the page. So I'm going to check it like this. You can see that I have the paper overhanging from the top, and that's not what I want. That's why I will take my scissors and I will trim, and these are really sharp scissors, so I recommend you use sharp scissors as well. So I'm trimming the corners of each one of the hinges up to the space between the hinges. Do not cut too much, but I'm trimming all of the hinges at an angle like this, and I will also flip it and do the same on the opposite side of the hinges. And the last one. Let's take our page again and try to fit it one more time on top of the hinge. And now you can see that it matches perfectly. No overhanging, nothing is showing, and really the height of the binding is the same as the height of the page. I want to add that fuzzy fabric at the top and at the bottom of the binding, and also I want to reinforce it a little bit with another piece of craft cardstock. That piece of cardstock that I have here measures 2 1/4 by 6 3/8. So the height will be different for me and you, probably, or not. You will have to check it out. So the piece is the same height as the height of the binding, and then the 2 1/4 should be the same for both of us, because this is how wide the inner spine will be. From one fold line on the flap to the other fold line, I have 2 1/4 inch. Okay, so I'm going to first score this piece at every 1/8 of an inch on the short side, so that when I glue it down to my binding, and by the way, I want to glue it to the binding with the side that naturally will want to curve in this direction. Okay, so first of all, I will add my fabric pieces along the top. I will have to see where I need to trim the fabric, or you can once again use some lace. So make sure that your fabric or lace doesn't overhang from the edges on the sides. Now we will need to glue down this piece on top of the spine of the binding, and for that I'm going to apply the glue onto all of the sections with the numbers. I'm not applying any glue to the side flaps. Now, except for the fuzzy edges, our fabric pieces will be sandwiched between the layers of the paper. This is how our binding looks like, because we have added those score lines on the additional paper piece. We can shape it nicely. The paper doesn't break, doesn't crack, and folds really easily. I want to add some ink to the first space between the pages, and I'm just going to fold the flap in and apply some ink on this side of the paper and on this side. So this is how it will look like, and I will do the same on the fold from this opposite side. I will also trim the flaps at an angle, not up to the fold, but about 1/4 inch away from it. We'll do the same on this flap. Okay, our binding is done, and I think we are ready to start attaching the pages to it. I will take my first page and remove the large tag from the page, and maybe even the rest of the elements that I have here, so that the page is more lightweight and easy to work with. I think that I want to add some tape on top of the flap, and how we are going to do it I will now explain. By the way, excuse my hands, they're covered with ink and glue, so when I will use tape at this point, I think I will have some fingerprints with the glue on it. So I have a piece of tape, which is not very long, but maybe long enough to cover the flap only. I will put the piece of tape under the flap so that it covers about half of it, and I will glue it down so the sticky part of the tape is facing up. Now I'm going to apply the glue to the flap itself and hold the flap flat, and then glue your page down together. So the tape now should stick to this section of the page, and that means that when you put your tag in, it will not catch on anything and it will slide easily into the pocket. I have my first page ready to be glued down onto the hinge. I apply the glue first to one part of the hinge, not very close to the fold line, by the way. Then I apply the glue onto the second half of the hinge, and also I'm trying to stay a little bit far from the fold itself. Then I take my page and I put the hinge inside it, and I mount the page on top, and then I press with my fingers making sure that I glue the page down to the hinge. So the first page is now attached to the binding. And here we have our pocket. I will let the glue dry and I will not put all the elements back into the page, since I have more pages to glue down. And the process of gluing them down first together and then to the hinge will be the same as I showed you before. Let's do one more page together. I will remove everything from the page. I will open it. I will take a piece of tape and have the sticky side facing up. I will slide the tape under the flap and glue the flap on top of the tape. I will try not to touch the second sticky half of the tape. I will apply the glue to the flap only and holding the flap down, I will glue the page together, and then I will go back to my binding, add the glue to the hinge on both sides, and mount my page on top. So the hinge needs to go right between the parts of our page, and make sure that you really put it on top and straighten it. Then when you glue the top and the bottom sections, at least, you will be able to unfold the page and burnish on top with your bone folder. And this is how it will look like. I will keep on attaching the rest of the pages the same way, and then we'll get back to you. All of my pages have been attached to the binding now. When you glue your pages down, make sure that you attach all of them in the right direction so that the pockets are all at the top of the page. We are now ready to attach the pages to the cover, and for doing that I want us to take a pencil and fold one part of the cover like so, and then draw a line with the pencil in the fold on this side as well. Now from that line I want us to measure 1¼ inch and create a guideline on the cover. You will do it on both sides. So I'm making marks in two places, 1¼ inch away from the fold, and then I draw a line. The line doesn't have to go all the way to the top and the bottom of the page. We just need some guide so that we can line up the mark on the flap of the binding with the horizontal line on the cover and the vertical line that we have just created, so that we can find a perfect spot for gluing down the flaps of the binding to the cover. And when you do that, make sure that you glue down the correct flap to the correct side of the cover. I'm going to add the glue, and I will glue it down, making sure that I match the mark on the flap with the horizontal line on the cover, and that I line up the edge of the flap with the line that I have sketched on the cover itself. You might need to put something to support the pages while you burnish the flap down. Before I glue the second flap down, I want to decide if I want to have some kind of an eyelet here on the spine for attaching my little paper embellishment to it. So I think that it is still not a problem to create the hole for that eyelet. If I want to be really precise, I can take a template. It is 2 3/8 wide, and then I can place it on top. Yeah, see, I wasn't very precise with my previous measurements. So this is the center. I will make a hole and put an eyelet in there. Now I can apply the glue to the flap and finish gluing the inner spine to the cover. And just like before, make sure to line up the mark on the flap with the horizontal line on the cover. You might need to hold all the pages together while you glue the flap down. I'm holding all of the pages with my hand. Now I think I can let go and burnish. The tacky glue dries pretty fast, and it also glues paper to paper really nicely. So this is what we have. This is our cover, and our pages are glued down inside. Looks very nice, and it's a very satisfying stage of the process when you actually start to see the results of your work. Now we have the pieces that we have prepared for the inside of the front and back cover. I will remove everything from those pieces and I will glue them down where they belong, making sure that I center each one of those paper layers. Now you can start putting everything back into your book. Here is our gorgeous book. This is how it looks. This is the spine. In the next and the last part of the tutorial, we are going to work on some finishing touches. But for today, that's all from me. If you have any questions, please don't forget to ask them in the comments below. I hope you like this video and consider subscribing if you are not a subscriber yet. See you soon and have a wonderful day. Bye.